Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good. Hi, hello everyone. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on this fine morning at Abu Dhabi Finance Week. I'm sure you've been to a lot of insightful panels, and I can promise you this one is going to be a very insightful panel. We're going to be discussing how crypto-based innovations can apply to traditional businesses, how the world's assets are being digitized, and what Bitcoin is really worth. Now, our lovely MC already mentioned this, but Jonathan Levin here of Chainalysis was just named as CEO of the company, so we'd like to give a round of applause for Jonathan for this. And of course, Chainalysis, Chainalysis is a blockchain platform helping government agencies and financial institutions to engage confidently with cryptocurrency. So, jumping off of that announcement, Jonathan, my first question is to you. So speaking of crypto-based innovations being applied to traditional businesses, we started to see more institutional investor participation this year. Why do you think that is? And what does institutional participation mean for the crypto industry?
Yeah, it's great to be here. And what we've seen over the last few years in the industry is that regulators are finally building regulatory frameworks that allow for all types of investors to access cryptocurrencies natively through retail platforms, but you've also seen actually regulators build frameworks so that people can offer structured products on top of crypto assets. And what we have seen is that actually the regulators have enabled there to be less crime in cryptocurrencies using Chainalysis. And what that means is that there's greater confidence in people being able to store value for longer, all the platforms to be regulated by regulators like ADGM, and that gives the confidence that institutions like BlackRock, like Fidelity, like Bank of New York Mellon, and banks in the region here, actually the confidence that they can offer products and services to their customers, that they can do their existing jobs that they were serving for their customers in other markets, and they can port that over to digital assets.
Anthony, speaking of BlackRock that was just mentioned, we've seen large institutions like them, like Franklin Templeton, go deep into crypto in recent years. What might encourage greater participation from institutions in the crypto space, in your opinion?
I think it's stuff that Jeremy and Richard were actually talking about. I think if you get U.S. stablecoin regulation, and then concomitant with that, if you can get a custody legislation. And why is that important? You won't get a Microsoft or an Amazon to put Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies on their balance sheet unless they can custody it at a major money center bank. And you can't do that right now. But if that comes to pass, and I predict it will in the next congressional term, then you will see a big opening for lots of institutions to buy the stuff outright or to buy it through the ETF of a BlackRock or a Franklin Templeton.
And John, you've worked with institutions like these as well.
Exactly. I mean, we've worked with BlackRock and Franklin Templeton. They've both launched their money market assets on Avalanche, so we support the growth and adoption of the Avalanche blockchain. And we've seen these titans and the institutional side jump in. We've also worked with T. Rowe and Wellington and Wisdom Tree and many others. And to Jonathan's point, we're seeing them more engaged because they're able to work within the confines that exist. We at Avalanche support this by giving the builders, the institutions, the enterprises, or anyone for that matter, a flexible architecture to build blockchain technology to support their needs, right? For the longest time, I think the industry has been trying to fit a square peg through a round hole. With the flexibility that we give, institutions love that. They're able to build what suits them. So it's exciting.
Yeah,
so not to interrupt you, but what he has, and the reason why we're an investor in his chain, it's effectively a Swiss Army knife. And so depending on the company he's going into, he can pull out the right tools for them. And so I think this is going to be a very, very big part of our future as we move to tokenization.
Yeah, we were just speaking of it, and it's very interesting. And we also, John, just backstage, we spoke also about scaling. Mm-hmm. So how do you see blockchain scaling to meet all this growing demand across all the numerous sectors and across numerous and new asset classes as well?
Absolutely. And I think, For those that are technologists, I recommend going back and reading the white paper that Avalanche wrote 5 years ago, speaking about this exact vision. The problem that we have currently, I think, with blockchains is that, for the most part, these layer one blockchains are general purpose. You're trying to put regulated assets, enterprises, payments, identity, all on a single ledger. These things always, sometimes don't mix, right? And different jurisdictions need it. So Avalanche, at least, does this in a different way. We do it through horizontal scaling by allowing anybody to deploy their own blockchain. Kind of like WordPress made websites grow, we allow for purpose-built blockchains by jurisdiction, by asset class, by asset type, by compliance needs, by scaling needs. So we are horizontally scaling like a highway that just adds more lanes based on the use case, the jurisdiction. We recently launched a chain in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia called Amla that runs all of its nodes in the kingdom because that was a requirement. We're working with companies here in the UAE as well, enterprises, institutions who have that regulatory requirement as well. So again, thanks Anthony for that. The Swiss Army knife, you can customize the technology to service your need in your business more so than the inverse, which has been the norm.
Yeah, we're going to speak about the growing need for this in the region as well. But Jonathan, I wanted to get back to you. We have to speak about this being a whirlwind of a year in crypto. What caught your attention the most, and what did you feel were the game changers for the industry this year?
Yeah, I think that what we've seen is that there's been a huge interest in both cryptocurrencies, the asset class, with the emergence of the ETFs, as Anthony spoke about. But we've also seen stablecoins actually take off for real payments. You know, Chainalysis, what we do is we track all of the different activity that happens on the blockchain. We know which entities are transacting, which transactions are they responsible for, and that's why people rely on us for investigations and compliance. And we've just seen an explosion in the amount of stablecoins used as the key infrastructure to power loads of different types of payment applications, remittances, and crypto trading. And really that has poised everyone to think about cryptocurrencies as infrastructure for financial services more broadly. And what we are seeing today is that, you know, there is the ability to actually have the visibility and trust that people need in those pipes in order for real-world assets to be moved onto it, to allow for real-world people to send money home. And actually, you know, it's through the transparency of the blockchain that actually regulators and enterprises are having the confidence to actually move in that direction.
Anthony, back to you here. So it's a huge growth in the crypto scene. Do you think this growth is sustainable? And we have to say, the United States is about to experience its first crypto-friendly administration. How do you see this impacting adoption and innovation in the US and globally?
Well, I mean, it's very meaningful because remember, the way the United States works from a regulatory perspective, you need help from Treasury, you need help from the SEC, you're eventually going to need help from the Fed, particularly if the major banks, money center banks are going to be involved. And so the new administration is putting pieces in place where each of those areas of the administration are pro-crypto. But what I would say to everybody in this room is that the prices that we're experiencing now are really 2022 prices. And just hear me out for a second. Had Gary Gensler just abided to American administrative law, he would have approved a cash or spot Bitcoin ETF sometime in the first quarter of 2022. So his delay and then the subsequent victory in the lawsuit delayed these prices. And so when people say to me, well, it shot up a lot very, very quickly, is that sustainable? Not only is it sustainable, it was being suppressed by arbitrary and capricious US regulation, and hopefully that's ending now.
And why do you think that is?
Well, the real reason, and even Scott Bassett, the incoming Secretary of Treasury, has said this, is that both Gensler and Elizabeth Warren were very close to Sam Bankman-Fried's parents. And they were on the cusp of giving Sam margin approval in the United States before he declared bankruptcy. And a result of which those two political figures decided to go very hard, arbitrarily and indiscriminately at the industry to eclipse the media exposure that they had on that issue with FTX. And so that's the real reason. And people in, whether it's Tom Emmer, Scott Bassett, people know that they did that. They went after the industry very unfairly.
Well, times are changing now, most definitely. John, back to you here, and I wanted to talk about tokenization. What role do you envision tokenization playing in reshaping global markets over the next few years?
So when we use the word tokenization, I mean, people usually think of equities or things of that, and the industry uses a terrible term called real-world assets. I would take tokenization in a different way. I would say in most assets that we see traditionally used to be analog, and then they were electronic, and we kind of live in a digital age. But tokenization just means putting a digital wrapper around something, and therefore it's a token. But you can tokenize anything of value. So your attention can be tokenized, your identity could be tokenized, your bank accounts, whatever assets you have. So tokenizing or digitizing assets across various classes, whether it's commodities, equities, foreign currencies, real estate, whatever it may be, allows these things to trade, to move, to be more fungible and more liquid across the globe, 24/7, 365. So I think it really opens up the pipes, because for the most part, the financial world runs on T+1, 2, 3, 4. Making these things instantaneous by putting a digital wrapper around them. Also, you can build in the compliance and all the back office functions that traditionally slow down operations by just opening it up completely.
I'm going to give this question to you, Jonathan, but feel free, all of you, to comment on this. We want to look regionally now. Where does the UAE stand in the global crypto landscape, and how have adoption trends evolved here in your view? And Chainalysis has just opened its first office here this year. Is that right?
Yeah, so we opened our Dubai office in February of this year, and we've been in the region a long time, working on really helping regulators build regulatory frameworks for the entire industry. And when you think about the regulation that we've seen, there's two parts of it. There's literally writing the laws, and ADGM and VARA up in Dubai have been at the forefront of actually drafting regulation, giving guidance, giving licenses out, and doing that. But really, what I think is super exciting about the region is that it's not just the words, it's also the action and the investment in the technology. And what I've seen, from this region in particular, is that ADGM takes technology incredibly seriously, and that they can invest in being able to actually push the operations of regulatory authorities to use technology to enforce regulatory guidance and to give licenses and oversee the market in a much more sustainable way. And so when I think about global setting of standards, it's not just a drafting process. It's actually demonstrating that you can operate at scale with the largest exchanges in the world, with the largest businesses, and have the technology in-house to be able to oversee that market safely, give the right feedback to the licensees, and make sure that capital markets are willing to put capital here. So that's what's been super exciting and why we're continuing to invest in the region.
Anthony, where do you see the UAE and the region in the crypto landscape now and years to come?
Well, I think leading the region. I just spoke to the chairman about the papers that they're putting out. I would compliment ADGM in the following way: they depoliticize the regulation, and so they're not looking at hard left regulation or hard right regulation like we sometimes do in the United States. They're really just looking for what's right or wrong for the industry, what's right or wrong for the customer. And so you're at the right intersection here in Abu Dhabi. How do you make the customer safe? How do you make the investment products transparent? And how do you increase the opportunity for commercial activity? And so that's the best that you can ask for from a regulatory body.
And John, you were just telling me backstage that you just hired a head of operations in the Middle East?
Yeah, so look, I'm in the technology business, right? And technology is global, but business is still local. And for us, different markets matter. We have different market leaders in APAC. And for us, and for me personally, the Middle East is very important. So we have a head of Middle East that's joined a few months ago. And we are looking to have our base for the Middle East in Abu Dhabi, here at ADGM as well. Because I think what Abu Dhabi has focused on in a great way is marrying both the technology and the institutional appetite. It's a great jumping off place for not just Abu Dhabi and the Emirates, but the broader Middle East in general. And to Anthony's point, right, there's great regulation. It's very welcoming. There's great incubators and accelerators, of course, like Hub 71, that help builders, not just from the region, but from around the world, come here and get the support they need, the capital and everything else. So we're really excited to be here.
It's not about the price, right, John? It's about the technology.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I just want to make sure.
All right. And for my last question for all of our panelists here, starting with you, Jonathan, I want to know what we should be looking ahead to. And more specifically, what are some new innovations that we should be paying attention to in this space?
Yeah, I think that, look, it's not out of the ordinary to sort of mention new technologies that are coming online. And I think that for Chainalysis, we've built a business for 10 years studying exactly how and why people are using cryptocurrencies. One of the things that we're very excited about is using that labeled data set and applying AI technology on top of that to actually enable much better insight, much lower barriers to entry for everyone who's starting to engage with the technology. And I think that what you'll see over the next 2 years within the industry is that you will see AI agents actually using cryptocurrency to pay other agents. When I first got into cryptocurrency 12 years ago, I wrote some of the earliest work on the security behind Bitcoin, and people started telling me about machine-to-machine payments. That hasn't happened, but what we will see is AI agents paying other AI agents, which will happen over the next 12 to 24 months.
Anthony?
Jonathan, you don't look old enough to be in this industry for 12 years. You should look like you're like 500 years old.
Anthony, new innovations, what we can expect or look forward to in this space?
Listen, there's not much for me to add. I know we're running out of time from what Jonathan said, but the future is right if we can get the regulation right. And so just think of it that way. We have the technology to eliminate $7 trillion of transaction verification fees around the world. And think about what that could unleash in terms of further economic innovation.
John?
I would just say I'm excited for the future that shows new applications, innovative applications that are happening, that are being built with blockchain technology on the background to enable this innovation without the cryptocurrency side being in the front, right? We oftentimes hear crypto first, but in truth, the blockchain layer and something that we provide allows for that innovation to thrive, and I think we're going to see that.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for our panelists on this very exciting discussion.
Great job.